Welcome to Exo Fleet's Insights, where every mile counts. The podcast where fleet data turns into real-world decisions. Each episode, we unpack what's really happening across mixed fleets, fuels and sites, and how better insights leads to better performance, lower costs, and fewer surprises on the road. So let's get into it.
I think it's important to talk about the cost of the rollout and how people really get it wrong and what that cost implication means for them. So a lot of clients come to us, don't they, halfway through their rollout looking for assistance, and they've made a couple of mistakes that have really been costly for them. What are those kinds of mistakes and how would we avoid them?
Obviously, there's the capital side and then there's the operating side, and there could be big risks on both sides. And I'll talk about the capital side first. So I think we'll get into the operating piece a little bit later in the discussion. But as it relates to the capital program design, really what I mean by that is your vehicle procurement, your charging station procurement, fitting out your site with the electrical service and the other bits and pieces that come along with that. What we see right now, and it's fair because these are all new technologies, but there's a healthy amount of range anxiety and just uncertainty around how these new vehicles will perform in the real world. So if you're the fleet manager that's responsible for making a decision to roll out an electric vehicle, you really want to have that assurance in most cases that the vehicle is going to be ready to go for you that morning or that evening, depending how you run your service. However, that kind of perception around the uncertainty and the risk, I think, has led a lot of folks to oversize early projects. And what I mean by that is you kind of do the assessment of what's out there for you in terms of makes and models of vehicles. You look at your use case and maybe, you can find a use case where you're running vehicles for 100, 120 miles a day or maybe 8-hour shifts. And it kind of fits for that battery electric case. But we've seen some operators then say, okay, well, I want to add another battery pack or add another set of strings into my vehicle, which increases the available range by 20 to 30%, but that comes with a very real cost, significant cost even for those batteries. And then it has a knock-on effect because typically you get bigger batteries. That means you're going to be buying maybe bigger chargers, which means you need bigger everything. And so that has a real knock-on effect on the capital cost. So going back to the previous points, really what we'd be recommending is let's do a deep analysis on what do you actually need with some buffer to make sure that we're not oversizing. And one of the things we like to say is let's not eat into the savings potential that these electric vehicles can present by mitigating your risk upfront by overbuilding. And so we'd be really looking at that and trying to save. And then there's other considerations on the capital side as well, Brenda, where, particularly for customers that are being served by grid operators that have peak periods where they may charge you between 4 and 9 p.m., for example, 200 to 300% to consume energy or basically to fuel your vehicles. And so if you're in that type of situation, there's software and tools that can help manage that. But upfront, you may want to consider, does battery energy storage or some other means of having something to generate power locally make more sense for you? So it's really about looking holistically at the system and what the needs are, and then paring back for there. If you're doing a couple of trucks or a couple of vans, maybe that doesn't make sense. And it's, in terms of, putting in battery energy storage and overbuilding. But again, it just goes back to identifying what we need and tailoring from there.
If anything you heard today reflects the challenges you're facing in your fleet, get in touch with us today at ExoFleets. We're always happy to talk through real-world solutions. exofleets.com